Hello and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the most important tech news in Asia. Today is Monday, the 6th of April, 2026. Let's get right to it. We're going to talk about China's domestic AI stack and any progress that it's making there. And then later in the program, we'll be joined by Vijay K.B, the CEO and co-founder at HumbleCode, to explore how technology leaders are thinking about AI infrastructure and the practical challenges of integrating these systems into real-world operations. Okay. Let's welcome our guests now. Vijay, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us today. We wanted to have you on because we wanted to get a sense for how technology leaders are thinking about AI infrastructure and the practical challenges of integrating these systems into real-world operations. But before we do that, just tell us a little bit about HumbleCode, please.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. So we are a full stack orchestration platform. So where basically customers build all the way from websites to online stores to booking engines to simple to complex workflows built using Humble Code. And we have been erstwhile no-code platform, but since last year we have converted our platform into a generative AI platform.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. In your experience and in your team's experience, how are businesses in Asia approaching AI adoption? And where are like some of the biggest gaps between the executives saying, we want to do this thing, and like the operational reality of actually being able to do that or being able to implement it?
Okay, that's kind of a good question. And I think everybody in the industry is so confused with all the hype which is happening around AI.
Feels like it.
Yeah. So I have seen in a lot of your shows also, like naming the agents and agents talking to each other,
Yeah.
which we found out to be far from the reality at this stage.
Go ahead.
So fundamentally, Michael, there is a there is a if you go two steps behind. So from our understanding on this complete technology, so there is a thing, this particular invention, the transformer model, which came, and all the LLMs happened after that.
Yep.
So basically, what this invention says is it is a probabilistic model. It is not a deterministic model. So no matter whatever kind of use cases you're trying to build and orchestrate or automate or do an agentic AI layer on top of it, so still the part of the core science has not changed as far as we know. So you are only going to get a probabilistic results, and it's not going to be a factual or a deterministic output from these model anytime soon. This could be achievable, but somewhere in the future, if there is another scientific revolution which comes along the way and the transformer model works on a much more accurate basis, so the output could be more realistic compared to probabilistic as of now. And if you talk about the overall industry,
Yep.
so even going back in our experience, if you see 2023-24, it was more on an experimental basis, because we were trying to test out what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of things didn't work for us initially when ChatGPT came. They released quite a few number of models, and there were developer APIs, and we tried to test and fine tune kind of a thing. And we wasted a lot of resources, be it from the manpower side or even be it paying these model companies.
Interesting.
And that we had plenty of issues, like the token restrictions and the costing of the model itself and all of that. So slowly we evolved, and somewhere in the beginning of 2025, so we kind of thought, okay, why don't we give another try? When there's a new models like Gemini and so many other models came.
Anthropic and all these other models, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So we went in, so we kind of got a good understanding within our technical department in the first 2 years. And then we exactly knew what we wanted to do with AI. So there were no more days saying that what could be done. It's a very hypothetical thing. Company can do everything. People are talking about, agents as something came from space,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No, so I want to talk about the agents. I want to get to that in a second. But more importantly, again, because I do think there is a little bit of a disconnect between, and I want to make sure that I get you to answer this question as well. I'm so glad you pointed out this idea that these LLMs are probabilistic models and they're not deterministic, right? And I guess the one thing I would want to ask you is, do you think most people even know that? Or do you think they're expecting it to be deterministic? And when they get an answer that seems factual, that's why they believe it? Because they believe it's deterministic as opposed to probabilistic, where it's going like, the highest probability is that this is the case, but it may not be. Do you know what I mean? Do you think people actually understand this or not? Particularly at like the
No,
senior executive level.
most of them, they don't understand, Michael.
They don't even know that that's a choice, though. Do you know what I mean? Yeah? Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, some of them understand. I mean, but to go to the core of the technology, whenever they're taking a business case internally to execute,
Yep.
what is happening is it's very it is still lying in the outer area. They have not gone into the core of the basic technology itself. And so I will give you a simple example.
Please.
So before I just got into this conversation,
Yep.
so I opened a couple of tabs. One is on ChatGPT and another one is on Gemini.
Okay.
So I asked, what sport does Michael Waits play or interested in? So I got two different answers.
Tell
So
me-
ChatGPT came,
Tell me this is great.
ChatGPT came out and said, there are no public information about any sport being played by Michael Waits.
Being played by, yeah? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So that was an answer. So Gemini came back with another different answer. So it said that you aggressively promote F1 on all your shows. And
Go ahead.
so you like to run in the mountains or somewhere in the beach, and you like soccer, the American football. So then I went back to Gemini and asked, so I couldn't find this information on ChatGPT, but how did you find? So
Good question.
it says that so we are able to read that data and train our model using the YouTube videos, what they have on their platform.
Interesting.
And I asked them why then ChatGPT doesn't have. So they are saying we have the front bench advantage because it's our platform.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to quickly train the model on top of it.
Got it. So do you want to know the real answer?
So
Go ahead.
coming back to what was the question, Michael? Again,
This idea of the difference between probabilistic and deterministic, right? So here's the real question, though, right? I get a sense, and I want to get your sense of this too, that a lot of senior executives will read a post on LinkedIn or see somebody say something on X or something like that and just go, that's what we need to implement at our company too. And then they tell the tech team, get an agent that does this thing, that thing, and the other thing. And they try to build it, like you said. Look, it took your team, you said 2 years just to experiment with this stuff, just to figure out how it worked until you could get it to do what you wanted to do. So they see the hype in the market and then they try to implement it and it's not working. Is that a fair assessment, you think?
absolutely right, Michael. So I would break that into three phases.
Go for it.
So initially there were a lot of confusion. You would have seen multiple platforms every other day, multiple models coming out, and people trying to understand what it can do or what it cannot do. And then came a phase where a lot of companies did the pilot phase. You would have the famous pilot which went through 2024, even
Right.
2025. So kind of what we could gather from the customers is they could achieve some results. So basically the technology is powerful and it works. So there is no doubt about this, or we are not going to go back down the line saying that they're going to scrap this implementation strategy or they don't believe the AI at the first place.
Go ahead.
So after the can it work phase passed, so now will it scale and will it make money for me?
Right.
So these are the primary things companies are looking at. So, but when it comes to will it scale, it is like a very large problem we are talking about. The infrastructures, the legacy systems. What do they have? Some of the company might have that advantage if you're a new company, and if you are starting everything new today. I mean, probably your architecture and the tech stack could be quite modern and customizable. But for the legacy companies, already some companies are claiming to be doing a lot of things, but we are not too sure if it is real or
right. Go ahead. I want to give you an example in a second, but please finish the thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, but we see that the technology is real, but on the scaling basis, Michael, there are two things. If you see, what we are seeing is even the token pricing is not standardized in the market.
Got it.
So what happens is, so when you're building a solution of such a large scale, So the primary thing when you optimize the cloud, the AI is nothing but an addition to the cloud layer. Already the cloud was so complicated, the cloud engineering was so complicated, and now the AI going into it adds more complexity to the existing thing. So now what happens? So typically, like the cloud, earlier days, the cloud implementation started happening, and then they found the workloads to be way too expensive, and they changed it to a hybrid cloud, and a lot of things were happening, and it's still happening. It is
Yeah.
not that cloud era is completed.
No, not at all.
Now with the AI coming in, so what is happening is it is just not about how we can implement, but whether that solution is practically monetizable. You should not be paying hundreds of $1,000s to the model companies, and you derive a little ROI out of that whole use case.
What is the trade-off again? Because you said this is super interesting, right? That the token pricing is not standardized, right? But if you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the model stuff, what's the balance between like I'm going to fire my entire staff that does, thing X and replace it with agentic AI? But the agentic AI, two things come to mind. One is it's not cheap. To be fair, it's not free for sure. But second of all, it's not autonomous, I think, in the same way that people think. And I want to have this part of the conversation with everybody that talks about this. You have employees, right? Are your
Yes.
employees themselves autonomous, or don't they come to you sometimes and they just go, oh, Vijay, I want to do this thing, this new thing, but I don't know if I should do it or if we can do it. Like they're not autonomous either. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So how do you square all this
Yes.
stuff?
So we are not even talking about autonomous thing here, Michael.
Go ahead.
So we are completely against autonomous. Like I said, the fundamental we go back was the probabilistic versus the deterministic model.
Yep.
So that is where the buck stops. And we are not talking about reducing the team size and all of that. If you see,
Yeah.
uh, internally when we converted the platform from no code to the AI, generative AI platform, so what it did was it helped our teams, instead of doing some heavy lift and shift jobs, to be more automated, conversational kind of a thing. But over a period, what we found is basically you definitely need humans in the loop, because
Completely.
building a complex software architecture, no matter what, so the AI can't do by itself. Because there is another analogy in one of the videos I would like to share also. So basically, when we talk about the transformer model, Michael, so what happens is there is no intelligence as such. There is no intelligence in the AI model. So basically, it predicts the next word. That's how the transformer model works.
Yep.
And there is all this context and MCP and the attention, how you refine that particular context to give a very closest output. So that is what is happening. So even when we had a conversation with some of the other companies where they said they are running this AI model on their proprietary data. They have the RAG and MCP, and they're running it on their own data. But even then, so the data has to run through the model, the LLM model. So what happens is, again, the actual factual data becomes a probabilistic when it comes through the LLM. So, for example, you have a mortgage PDF in your system,
Yep.
which is very real, and it's a real document, authenticated document in your side.
Yep.
But when you want to read that through the LLM, what happens is the actual my document might have mistaken when it is reading through your system.
Why?
Because that's the pace of the large language model. So what happens is that's why uh, I could see in some of your discussions. So you always have this question of why there is consistent answers are not coming again and again, right?
Yep.
So what happens when this whole the process happens in the back end? So it depends on the same query. When you query it for the second time, if one of the nodes or neurons they call in the transformer tech, if it slows down, so the kind of output you get at that stage is completely different from the previous stage.
Yeah, it would have to be. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so there are things like this. So what we see is there is nothing we could. We are not in a phase saying that so much employment will go off because of implementing the solution, which is very false according to our observation.
I think so too, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what we feel is the technology is real and it is implementable. And again, based on the scale of this, scale of the project, again it varies. If we are talking about SMEs, it's a different thing. And if you're talking about enterprise, it's a whole lot of different things.
Yeah, yeah.
We see we are at least 2 to 3 years far away from.
Can I ask you this too? Because you mentioned the word infrastructure, right? And you also hinted at this idea of like if you're a newer company, you may be running a newer technology stack just in general, right? If you're an enterprise or an incumbent company, you may have some legacy stuff inside of your sort of system architecture. What do you think is like the optimal way to run AI infrastructure so that it actually can scale inside some of these companies, whether it's an SME or even a large enterprise? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. So this is a good question. So we'll have to go back to the cloud era,
Go
Mike.
for it.
So if you see, in our experience, a very senior cloud engineer who's worked with AWS for 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
he could optimize a cloud which is costing $15,000 a month. He can reduce that to somewhere 5,000, 4,000.
Okay.
If you know how to orchestrate the entire cloud to do it in a very optimal way. So this AI implementation exactly goes, like I said, it has added one more layer onto the cloud implementation as of now. So why I'm saying it is a good thing for the new companies which are venturing now rather than the legacy system, because the legacy systems are too large, like no matter what fancy technology language we talk, changing the direction of that and implementing the AI just right on the existing technology is not as easy as it sounds.
No. Can I just jump in for a second? Like, I think about one of the companies where I worked, a global bank that was literally, and I'm not going to say the name of the company, but I think it'll be obvious from what I say now. But it was just like an accumulation and an amalgamation of like literally hundreds of companies. And the internal technology stack was such a mess that I can imagine like what you're saying here is this is a large institutional bank, right? It's globally known brand. Everybody, you see their logo everywhere. But I imagine if you're implementing AI inside of this company, it could be a complete nightmare because of all the things you just mentioned. Yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah, I just think it would be a complete nightmare. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, no, no. These are the couple of things. If it's a new company, I mean, the technology stack, what they will be implementing
Yeah.
at the current state of affairs could give an advantage. I will point you to a couple of simple examples. So
Please.
when the cloud and the mobile came,
Yep.
so who were the few companies who succeeded? It was Airbnb, Grab, Uber. So these were the company who fully built grounds up on that cloud and mobile and all the cloud technologies. And if you see, that has gone on to be the business uh, thing on its own. We didn't have any kind such businesses before the cloud happened and mobile happened.
Yeah.
So likewise, there will be few companies in this AI revolution. It could be completely AI native, but it's very hard to predict, like what kind of companies will come in what kind of a domain at this stage.
How do you guys think about governance? Do you know what I mean? When you're implementing all this new AI technology, how do you think about governance and like how do you try to explain to the people with whom you're working like why governance is so important? And I guess the second thing is how about like system interoperability as well, right? And again, like I told you for this big bank where I was working, some of these systems, I don't even know how they spoke to each other. So how do you think about that stuff?
Okay, so not much has changed from your days.
I'm sure.
Not much has changed.
I'm sure.
So it went on from a simple XML integration, CSV integration, and then the APIs came into play. There are a lot of complex APIs where two systems can talk. But again, if you see, if it has changed the entire integration landscape, we would say it has improved a little bit, but it doesn't cuts across all these multiple systems and talk and take decisions. That building that itself is like a building a system on its own.
Yeah.
So when it comes to governance and all the security and all of these parts, so one advantage internally when we talk about our platform, so we didn't go through the general coding route. So if you see, there are a lot of vibe coding companies which came in the last 2 years.
Right.
So you just type in something and you have the output. So we call it a black box because software shouldn't be developed in such a way that you just have few sentences and you have the output and then you go in to see what needs to be changed. So that might take much longer than the actual building phase itself.
Exactly. Go ahead.
So in a typical SDLC. So since we were a no-code platform earlier, so we had this hundreds of pre-built components which were already available in the platform. So what happened was some of the use cases like websites and online stores and booking engines. So these were kind of simple use cases, I would say. The solo entrepreneurs or even the people from operations team can just log in and do everything. But when it comes to a little bit of complex workflows, there is a part of business logic which needs to be written. So we always found internally, the users were not so comfortable like working with the websites or online store. So we kind of, when this generative AI came, so we could re-architect the whole thing, and that could be done conversationally. We saw a complete advantage internally. And another point to your question, how do we build the guardrails? So our platform was there for a long time, and whatever applications you generate through the platforms. So what happens is all the infrastructure, all the way to the back end, how your databases are stored, how your front end files are stored, and how the APIs are being configured. Everything is already available, Michael. So we are not building anything new on that front.
Got it.
So for us, it became quite a lot easier compared to another kind of building individual guardrails for complex systems.
Can I ask you this too? When you're working with some of your clients, right? Where do you think they are maybe underestimating just some of the internal human and maybe just like organizational challenges of adopting AI, if that makes sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. So again, I would make a differentiation between SMEs and enterprise.
Yeah, fair enough. Go ahead.
SMEs are a lot more open. We have seen, because they are not too much worried about security and guardrails. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that way, but
Yeah.
they are not. So they are like they are open to experimenting a lot of new technologies. But what happens is when you go to a upper SME or enterprise, the basic challenge what we see, it's an enterprise strategy. The people. There would be head of a global sitting somewhere and all the regional offices. So implementing the decision to implement the technology itself, it practically, it's not an easy call to change everything. But at the same time, if you see the operational people inside, so they are willing to experiment this. Now, what is happening is a lot of things are being outside their corporate tools. Individuals are using all the chat GPTs and Gemini outside their work time, to do some work stuff.
Yep.
But they really want this to be implemented within the organization. They have, from some of the conversation, there are some simple tools which are already there in the corporates to, summarize the decks and generating text, but they have not gone beyond that.
Got it. Can I ask you this too? And then I'll let you go. You keep making this dichotomy between how SMEs are doing this and how large institutions are doing it, large enterprises are doing it as well. Do you think there's some aspect to this technological implementation that levels the playing field a little bit between like what an SME can accomplish now and what an enterprise can accomplish? And to be fair, if, as you suggest, the SMEs are not better at it, but just more likely to experiment with stuff, then maybe they can, in some cases, jump ahead because they can implement this technology faster and easier?
Yes, that's absolutely possible. So another one I wanted to discuss is, so if you see this entire AI landscape, it is more advantageous for the SMEs rather than the large enterprises. So because in our understanding, what we feel is now these small mid-level companies can go aggressively against the large enterprise companies.
Yeah.
Because having the advantage of exploring this technology or being nimble to have these changes in their thing, so they can compete quite well with the large companies. But at the same time, large companies are not going to leave it as such and stay idle. So they are also going to fight back. But the thing is, their implementation cycle is going to be much longer compared to the SMEs or individuals, how they are going to adopt this tool.
Yeah, it feels like it. Okay. Look, I really want to thank you for coming and doing this today, Vijay. We really appreciate your time. We'll have to have you back when the conversation needs to continue. Thank you again for doing this today.
Thank you so much, Michael.